Now, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, will unveil his 5-year plan for his second term in office later today. I have with me in studio Egie Akpata. He's the Director General of Union Capital Markets, and he joins me for the outlook of the capital markets this week. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Egie.
Good morning, Kenneth.
So let's start with the Central Bank Governor. Now, for you, what would you say was the key milestone of his first term in office?
I think a very volatile currency, which the central bank finally got under control, using both conventional and unconventional means.
Okay, but as we go into, as he tries to unveil his plans today, you know, what are you expecting from this announcement?
Well, I'm expecting that a lot of the strategies that are in place now will be sustained, but I think most of the new things are around how to increase local manufacturing in a number of areas, how to boost agriculture. And we'll be seeing the central bank getting more directly involved in lending than it normally should.
All right, because he's been talking strong on the textile industry. We've seen that he's been making bold plans in that area. What would you make of that?
Well, I think it's good. I mean, the question is whether global events and globalization has overtaken some of those industries to the point where it's difficult for them just to be competitive. But it's a very good initiative, and it will probably be replicated among a number of other products, or a number of other agricultural products, which Nigeria used to be very competitive in.
Okay, and I also see he's doing quite a lot to try and get more out of the creative industry. We also saw earlier where he launched the Creative Industry Funding Initiative, and then now we're hearing he's probably going to build some academies.
Well, I mean, I think what they're doing is, which is logical, is to, if you look at the way the GDP is constructed now and where the growth is, clearly it's a lot of growth in creative industries. A big chunk of GDP is agriculture, so he's trying to focus on areas that can overall grow the economy. Whether or not it makes sense to start building physical structures or how best to support that industry is a totally different debate.
But let's look at the 43 items. Recent news, you know, of last week was the fact that the presidency is asking the central bank to blacklist firms that are smuggling some of these restricted items into the country. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
I don't think it's not that new. I mean, central bank governor has mentioned this quite a number of times over the past few months. The question becomes, you know, whether these smugglers are using companies to do these transactions. Yes, they have bank accounts. How flexible are they? But the central bank has to do something. It's not enough to just complain about the problem and hope it goes away. The question is whether they can legally and operationally do enough with those threats to actually reduce the problem.
All right. On monetary policy, though, what would your scorecard be for the central bank governor?
Depends on which time period you are using.
Yeah, well, we're looking at his first term, and then also looking ahead as well in the future.
Well, I think at the beginning, the crash in oil price was unprecedented, so obviously that was a bit of a shock, and the central bank did try a number of different approaches, and they finally settled on one approach that seems to have worked so far. So clearly, the discovery process was painful, but I think they finally got a formula that has definitely worked over the past 2 years plus. The question is at what cost? To the Nigerian government, to the Nigerian economy. But again, I think they've concluded that the most important thing is currency stability over low interest rates, and they've just zeroed in on that. It's very hard to balance all those things out.
All right, now let's come back to oil. We're seeing oil reaching about $65 now. Interesting what's happening in the geopolitical environment. We're seeing the US and Iran on one hand. We're also seeing other moves that are impacting the oil prices. And the G20 summit expected just later this week. What do you make of that sector, and how do you see that, you know, impacting Nigeria's economy going forward?
Well, I think definitely when you talk about central bank strategy for the next 5 years, oil is the variable they cannot control, and it's probably the variable that has the biggest impact on everything they do. So oil prices moving up has nothing to do with Nigeria. It moves down, nothing to do with Nigeria. But again, the currency and a lot of what the central bank does is hinge on that. So clearly, if the trend continues at these levels, then it's good for the currency and for what the monetary authorities can do. What is also helping is a drop in the US interest rates. In the past 2 years, those rates were rising. Now that they've stabilized or could come down, that does help Nigeria. So if a few variables go in the central bank's way, then the next 5 years might be better than the previous 5. All
right, then let's now look at other news impacting the sector. Today we're seeing we're hearing just stories about a possible listing from AIRTEL. They filed for an application from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'd like you to get your thoughts on what this means, and then look at the fact that we just had another telco recently list on the bourse.
Well, I think it's obviously good for the market. It's been a long time coming. AIRTEL is AIRTEL Africa, so it's not just AIRTEL Nigeria. So that's interesting that it's listing here. It's dual listing. So that's very positive for the local market. What's more interesting that AIRTEL is actually raising money, MTN did not. So it is probably an opportunity for some institutional investors who want to take positions to get into some of this, to get into an AIRTEL. But it's overall good for the market. I mean, more depth, a new sector, very large sector coming to the market. And if you already have 2 out of 4 of the companies, and the two largest, then that's a very good thing.
All right, then. Still on company news making round today, Owando and SEC, we're going to see that case continue today because the court is going to hear that case. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that story as well.
Well, I mean, again, it's legal issue, so let the court decide. Sooner or later, the problem will be resolved one way or the other.
Okay, I'd like to also get your outlook for the second quarter because we see it's fast coming to an end. Looking at the economy, looking at the budget, looking at the National Assembly taking full shape. These are a lot of events that happened in the second quarter. But your overall analysis, or I'd like to get your overall summation of how you think we've performed so far in the second quarter.
Well, I mean, the second quarter has not been great because there's no clear direction. You don't have ministerial appointments. It is good that the central bank governor was confirmed, and we know at least that anchor is in place. But direction is not very clear, and that is having an overall impact on performance of a number of indices in the economy and in the markets. But I'm sure that by the end of this quarter, hopefully, we'll know who the ministers are and direction can start to take place, and so the remaining part of the year should be a lot better. Yeah, because I was going to ask you the outlook for third quarter, because we're going to see most of these appointments to take shape in that period, hopefully, and how you see that impacting the economy going forward. Well, I mean, if those appointments are made on time and the strategies for each of these key sectors can be known, then there's enough time this year with a good oil price to still have a positive outcome for the year. A lot, again, depending on the oil price falls, and some of these things become not as important. All right, then, thank you for your time on the show today. I've been speaking to Egie Akpata. He's the Director General of Union Capital Markets.